And I guess we'll start with Daryll Morey, Keith Pompey, as he has kind of orchestrated this whole thing. And there were some people worried after the Harden thing and all that they weren't going to be able to get this done. But what would you describe the job that Daryll Morey has done this offseason? Did you think that he was going to have issues putting this plan all together?
I definitely did think that he was going to have issues. I mean, based off of, some of the things that Paul George said, right? Like, oh, I definitely talk to people. We talk. And then he also said, I'm not about chasing a championship. I'm about the perfect fit. So I was a little bit concerned. But as far as talking about Daryll, you have to give him an A+. I mean, you do. And the reason being is, Paul George was the number one free agent, unrestricted free agent out there in the market, right? And there's some people who may say, well, look, he's older, he's this, he's that. Well, he was the best thing out there. And Daryll Morey was able to get him. And you look at Caleb Martin, I feel like he's another great get. Andre Drummond, a guy that they should have never let go. I feel like, Morey, for the people who always criticize him and say, come on, Daryll, show me. I think that Daryll Morey had a great offseason thus far.
All right, so I think there are people that were surprised that he was able to get some stuff done. Let's start with Paul George, and you heard what he said on the Podcast P podcast, where he was pretty forthright. He said a lot of interesting things there. What were some of the things that stood out to you about what he said? Because he kind of admitted that maybe this wasn't his first choice or maybe even his second choice. Does that bring you any pause hearing that?
I mean, not really. I mean, here's the thing. Let's face it. When you look at Paul George, and wasn't his first choice, maybe it was his second choice. A lot of those teams were West Coast squads, right? And he's a West Coast guy. He wants to stay West. You look at a guy like Steph Curry. He didn't want to play for the Golden State Warriors. You know what I mean? And now they're about to erect statues of him out there. So, it's one of those things where, it wasn't his first choice, but at the same time, let's keep it 100. He wanted to get paid. And the Sixers were the only team that was willing to give him what he wanted. And then he came here. So, my thing is, if he comes here and he starts pouting after a couple months, then maybe we may have something here. But at the same time, it makes sense for a California kid who, his family and all these other people are out there who will prefer to stay out there. And it's like you're leaving the sunshine to come to the cold, the humidity in the summertime. So I'm not going to fall for that. I'm really not. And let's keep it 100. He kept it real. He said it.
Yeah.
Some guys will lie and say, nah, don't believe that. I always wanted to come here. Nah, he kept it 100. He got it out there, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, yeah, I might have wanted to go someplace else. That doesn't mean that I can't like where I ended up. Like I might have had aspirations. You might have said Pitt wasn't my first choice, and I'm sure it couldn't have been, but you ended up at Pitt and liked it.
Hey, man, when you were saying that, I was about to say, yeah, just like you. You wanted to go to Pitt, but you couldn't go to Pitt, so you went to West Virginia and you loved it. I was going to say
that. Keith Pompey for the Philadelphia Inquirer here. So obviously they get Paul George, and everybody's talking about his age and all that stuff. But really, the fit that he brings between Maxey and Embiid, how much of an upgrade in your mind is that over what Tobias Harris was? Because I would imagine he kind of fills and steps into kind of that Tobias Harris role.
Yeah, you know what? It's weird. So when you look at it, when the Sixers had Tobias Harris is what, a power forward, right? They're about the same height, but Tobias Harris is a power forward. But you needed Tobias Harris to fill the role that Paul George could fill. You needed a guy who can be an elite defender. He became a better defender, but he's not on Paul George's level. And you needed a guy who can basically be able to impact the game without touching the ball all the time. Where Tobias, he has to be in pick and rolls. He can't stretch the. I mean, you want him to stretch the floor, but that wasn't his game. So when you look at it, it's kind of like you say where Tobias, was kind of like a B-level type of guy. Well, you got a future Hall of Fame type player to play the position that you wanted Tobias to play. So it's definitely an upgrade. And when you look at these, not to be long-winded, but when you look at these trios, these three headed monster type guys, right? The teams that work out were like Boston and also the Miami Heat. And the reason why it worked out in Boston with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen is because all three of them played different positions, right? The same thing with the Miami Heat when they had LeBron James, Wade, and Chris Bosh. I look at this one, it's similar, where you have Maxey, who's a point guard, combo guard. You have George, who's a wing, a perimeter, wing. He could play the 2, he could play the 3, he could go small ball 4. And then you have Joel Embiid as a center. So you don't have guys who are competing with each other for touches, guys who are getting in each other's way. And that's why I think that he's a perfect fit. And he's going to play his natural position, whereas Tobias had to play the 3 and do other things for him out of position.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people look at that fit and think it's just a perfect fit, and then they got some other interesting questions around them. They bring back Kelly Oubre, and where he kind of fits in now. Is his role different in your eyes from the guy who kind of excelled here last year?
No, I don't, because I feel like the thing about with Kelly is when Kelly really, and we talked about this during the season, when Kelly really found his groove and was extremely impactful, and he did something that Tobias didn't do, was he was able to impact the game without getting plays called for him, right? Whether it was crashing the boards, playing stuff on D, and that's the type of guy you need in a lineup with the big 3 that they're calling them now, right? Because it's like, what's going to happen? Embiid misses a shot. Maxey misses a shot. Paul George. You know that you have to keep an eye on Kelly Oubre because he's going to crash the boards. He's going to do different things. He's going to get out in transition, get, steals, the easy layups. I mean, that's what he did. And also, I think that when you talk to Kelly Oubre and you say to him, what position do you prefer to play? He'll always say shooting guard. The fact that they have Paul George now, who could play the 3, is going to enable Kelly to feel more comfortable as a long 2 as opposed to playing a 3. So I think that we understand what he can do without the ball, but it also he can now play shooting guard and have success at that area.
Yeah, and you just said it, a long 2, and that brings us to Caleb Martin, who I guess would be a small 4. Is that the role there? I mean, is that where they kind of see him and want him? What is the thought process behind it? And I like the Caleb Martin sign. I think that's the kind of guy they've been really lacking. But what do they think about his role on this team and his fit?
Yeah, nowadays they say, look at it, what do they call it? Positionless basketball for the most part, right?
Right.
But when I look at them, I think that when you look at the Boston Celtics and see how they do it, yeah, you got a 1, you got a 2, and then you got 2 wing guys playing the 3 and the 4. And I think that's how they look at it. But I think that, if I do have a concern, I would not. Don't be wrong. I love Caleb Martin. I love his game. He's a starter in this league, especially for this team. But to me, I feel a little bit more comfortable with a guy who's going to be at least 6'8", playing a 4, right? That's just my preference, right? But at the same time, I look at and you see what the Sixers are doing. You see what the New York Knicks are doing. What they're doing is they're going out there getting guys who are known for shutting down the Celtics, right? That's what they're thinking. They're making these moves not just for the regular season, 82 games. They're looking at this guy as a guy who can help us against the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. So I kind of like it. But again, I do feel like, you may be able to have that starting lineup, but go out there and try to go out and get some bigger fours or something like that who can fit in the mix and help out.
Yeah, that I guess we could get into that a little deeper with Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Is there anything down the pipeline here still, or is this, I know they need 2 more guys, I think, on this roster, but getting Andre Drummond, you and I have had many conversations over the years. Obviously, that position has been an albatross for them. They didn't want to give him up. They had to get the Harden deal done. Now he's back. He understands his role. When you talked to him yesterday, it sounds like he is happy to be back, serving the role that he did when he was here the last time.
Oh, no doubt. No question. I mean, it's funny because, not funny, but it's sad. Like, when he was traded, people forget him and Embiid were like on the practice court afterwards, a competitive game of not one-on-one, but it was like a shooting competition. And they were laughing and joking and this and that. And next thing you know, he walks off the court. And that's shortly thereafter he realized that he'd just been traded, right? So it's kind of like, it's great for him to come back because of the camaraderie thing. And secondly, it's like he knows that he's a vital piece. He knows that. Embiid knows that. Embiid is comfortable with him being here because what does it do? It takes a lot of pressure off of him, meaning you play X amount of minutes because the reason why you got to play all these minutes is because when you come off the floor, the other team's going to go on a run. No, you don't have that with Drummond, right? They're different types of player, but he's a starter level big. Not only that, the rebounding. They're not going to get killed on the boards anymore. So it's like when they lost him, that was a huge piece, especially that playoff series against the Miami Heat. Remember, Embiid didn't play in the first 2 games that year. So to have him back, especially with Embiid's injury history, is not as big as what George getting him, but it's just as a little bit close, like vital in regards to being vital, because we all know that Joel Embiid has a huge injury history. And when Joel Embiid leaves the game, we know that the opposing team always goes on runs, regardless who's on the floor. So to have a legitimate center who can stop the bleeding, so to speak, I feel like is a huge pickup, and it's one that a lot of people aren't talking about enough.
Well, and you wonder, I know they had a lot of injuries, but when Joel's out, they went from the 3 seed or the 2 seed to, one of the best teams in the league to having to play in the play-in game. It just having Drummond probably prevents them from falling that far, just having somebody capable of playing that, extended minutes there. Paul did he did what he could, but you had to play him extended minutes, and, that became a little bit of a problem. They lose Paul Reed. They get Drummond in, so they replace that spot there. Eric Gordon, who we're going to talk to in about 15 minutes here, I think this is a really crafty pickup, Keith, man. He's not afraid of the big shot. This is a guy who's a wing 3-point shooter, and that wing 3-point shot should be open on this team. It was all year last year. They didn't have a guy that could stick it really with Beverly and Lowry. That's not really what they're good at. But, man, I see Eric Gordon getting a lot of good looks.
Yeah, I see that as well. He's a guy that, not only that he's going to get good looks, but he's also that veteran. And he's a guy that, he probably won't play a lot of minutes during the regular season. He'll get minutes, but not, a bunch. He's a guy that they're looking at to get these shooters around the big 3 to help them for the playoffs. He's a winner. And then you got to give Daryll Morey credit on this one, too, because, 2 seasons ago, he was trying to get him in the trade on draft night. He was trying to trade for him. So, Daryll identified this guy a long time ago as someone who he needed to help stretch the floor for Embiid, and he got him.
Yeah.
He's a little bit older, but at the same time, what do you want him to do? You want him to shoot the ball, and that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, he's a shooter, right? I mean, so the age thing last year, I
Yep,
said
that's what he does.
he's
Yep,
still
like
playing.
he's one of those Pitt Panthers, you know.
Indiana, man. He's an Indiana guy. But he's still playing like 27, 28 minutes a game last year. I said I couldn't believe when I got the press release today that he's been in the league for 16 years, Eric Gordon, and he's still playing 26 minutes. We just lost Keith Pompey. We'll try to get him back here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. But Eric Gordon, by the way, is going to join us in about 14 minutes from now. I do want to get Keith's thoughts on this rookie class. He's seen McCain now play last night and the night before. They'll play again tonight, by the way. I also want to get Keith's thoughts on Joel playing at the Olympics, and we'll ask him if there's anything left. Gary Trent, by the way, Jr., was just released by Toronto. So I'm interested to see if that's a guy, Nick Nurse, obviously, some ties there in Toronto. So let's bring Keith back in. Keith, I was saying, I got the press release that said he's been in the league for 16 years, Eric Gordon. I couldn't believe it that he's been playing for 16 years. But, man, he's still playing 25, 26, 27 minutes a game last year with the Suns. So he's a guy that he's not just like an afterthought kind of signing or a second. He's probably going to have a pretty big role on this team.
Yeah. I mean, yes, and that's the thing. Like 26 years. 16.
16, yeah.
But the funny part is, it's kind of like it's also. I'm a big fan of his because I like his business-like approach. Like he's not with the shenanigans. I'm not saying he's like a fighter or an enforcer or anything, but he's just a guy that comes in and he's a good hard worker and he plays hard and he makes shots. There are going to be some people who are concerned and say, he's been in the league 16 years, he's older, and this and that. How is he going to help this team? Well, my question is, who are you going to get on the minimum who can shoot the ball the way he shoots? And a guy who's a selfless guy who just wants to win. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's the thing. It's like you look at it, and they got this guy for a bargain, and he's a guy who knows how to play off stars, and that's the big thing. He was in Phoenix last year. They struggled, knew how to play off of those stars. When he was in Houston, he played off of James Harden. These are the type of guys that you want. These are the type of guys that help a team become competitive and build depth.
Loving the conversation with Keith Pompey. A couple more quickies. Number one, I don't know how much of the summer league you're watching or whether that matters, but is Jared McCain in your mind going to have? I said yesterday, Maxi's rookie year, he played 15 minutes a game. He averaged 8 points. Is it too far-fetched to think that McCain can approach those numbers?
You know what? That's a great question. The difference is when you looked at that team that Maxey was on, Ben Simmons wasn't really like a shooter or a scorer, this and that. You know what I mean? And I felt like they needed Maxey to get it. I feel like McCain is going to be a different situation where he's going to shoot the ball. He's going to stretch the floor. Now, granted, he's shown that he can do more than that, in this summer league. But I feel like, if you need McCann to score a lot of points, you might be in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
But, you're not leaning on him, but if he's just a complimentary guy that hits a couple threes here and there,
Yeah, that's going to be his impact, I feel like. But I do feel like it's one of those things where you can look at it like, okay, he fulfills an immediate need on a championship caliber team with his shooting because you have Paul George, right? And that could be his role. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're developing him just like you develop Maxey for the future.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. And he's another guy, by the way, very good wing three-point shooter. I think the guys on the wings last year, Beverly, Lowry, not wing three guys. These two, Gordon and McCain, he's a very good wing three. I like that part. Ricky Council, does he fit into this roster, into this rotation?
Oh, he does. He definitely does. You know what I mean? He's a guy that put in a lot of work. You look at how his growth from last year to now, like based off of his last year's summer league, he would shoot the ball and you're like, oh, he needs to work on his shot.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We know he could dunk. But now you look at him, I feel like the small sample size that he had in the regular season towards the towards the end of the regular season really shows you that he can be a nice rotation guy for him. I mean, he's a guy that can play both forward positions. If they want to go small, he can do that. And he's also he played shooting guard in high school and some of that in college. So you look at him and you say to yourself that, he's very versatile and he's a good defender too. He's the type of guy that they need to have depth in this league.
I guess as we get ready to wrap up with Keith here, looking at Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer, looking at what's out there, what's next? Is Daryll got another sly move up his sleeve, or is this kind of a finished deal and they'll take a couple guys from this summer league roster?
No, I think Daryl's going to get some more players. I do. I really do. I feel like, it's going to be kind of sort of like what the Kelly Oubre thing did. There's certain guys out there that, some people talking about Kyle Lowry coming back, right?
Yep.
But I think that a lot of this is, let's face it, you have minimum slots that you want to give the money you want to use, right? You want to, keep stay under the second apron, excuse me. But the thing is, it's like one of those things I just feel like it's going to be, he's going to wait, take his time, and then somebody's going to come to him because they're going to want to play for a team that they feel like has an opportunity to win a championship.
I'll tell you what, I just saw Gary Trent Jr. He'd be an interesting guy. I know they were saying that he might play for a minimum.
That's what I'm saying.
And hit the market again next year. I think he'd be a nice fit, man.
Yeah, that might be one of those, let's trade, do a sign and trade, you know what I mean? But he hit the market, so you can't really do it. But you know what I mean? Beforehand, it could have been one of those type of deals. But, yeah, he would be a great addition, and I would wait for him. I would definitely wait for him.
Yeah, he just got released by Toronto. They're moving on. He's going to be a guy who's going to be a pretty interesting name over the next couple days here. We'll see 43% on catch and 3 shoots last year for Toronto. Obviously, the Toronto connection, that helps as well. And all right, Keith, well, it's been a busy summer, man. We thought it might be busy. It's been busy. We'll see what ends up happening here. Oh, the last thing I got for you. Do you what's your thoughts on Embiid playing in the Olympics?
You know what? Here's the thing. I know there's a lot of people who don't like it, but at the same time, the last couple of summers, what was Embiid doing? He was sitting around. He was rehabbing injuries, right? He didn't really do much. For the first time, Embiid's going to come into training camp in shape, right? So it's like, to me, I'm like, yo, this is a bonus in a way. Like, if he goes there and he's healthy, he doesn't have any injuries, I think that we should, embrace it because we know that he's going to come in shape. The last couple of years, they had they call it ramp-up period. It was like the preseason, he didn't really play. He didn't play at all. And then the first couple of weeks of the season, he was trying to get in condition. So I feel like, personally, this could be a blessing in disguise.
I like that point. I also like the fact that he's around all these other guys. I hope they treat him like Charles Barkley and bust his stones and saying, yo, when are you getting out of the second round, dude? And maybe that'll push him even further to try to get, out of that because of all the contemporaries that he's now playing with and around. It can only help him to have a little extra fire. And if that helps him get out of that second round, I think it's an all-win. But obviously health, you always question that with him, but we'll see. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer, everybody, here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, buddy.
All right, thanks for having me. Hell to pit, too.
Get out of here. Keith Pompey for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I gave him the last hell to pick because I banged him earlier with a little dub fee, as we always have a little fun with that here.